Thank you. Yes, to start with, Theosophy is truly the science of the mind. And here today, we're going to focus on the three powers of the mind. But before that, let's start with IKEA. And what does IKEA have to do with the science of the mind? Well, more than we may think. If any one of you have been to IKEA and purchased a piece of furniture, you know that you come home with a flat parcel. And when you open the parcel, you have all these different pieces, the screws, the nails, the plugs, and so forth. And then you have the famous instructions. And they are beautifully made because they try to capture the idea and put them into images so that they can be understood by anyone around the globe, no matter what language they speak. And you can say that, of course, once you have opened the package and you try to assemble the piece, well, then is when it becomes, excuse me, really, really complex. It's not that easy as it looks on the instructions. And a little bit same thing with the study and science of the mind from a theosophical perspective. You read the ideas that are shared in Theosophy, and you think, well, it's quite a piece of cake. And then you say, wait a minute, how do I put it into practice? And no matter how much you study the instructions, you eventually have to put it into practice if you want to have a workable furniture. So the question is, how can one compress Theosophy as an ocean of wisdom into one drop? And that is the teaching we have been given. And to put it into a drop in such a way that the drop can expand into the ocean again. Because that is what the theosophical ideas do. They are very simple in their essence, and they're all condensed in one drop. And then we have to expand that drop back into the ocean again through our insights. Another way to do that is to put, a mantra. This is a famous one, Tattvam Asi, that thou art. And you could say that in this mantra is packaged all the whole teaching of Theosophy. This is the essence. But as we know, it takes simplicity to understand complexity, as well as it takes the heart to understand the mind. So without the heart, we cannot really understand the mind. But let's start with a background before we come to the three powers of the mind. What is mind? And what is Maya, really? It seems that the link between Maya, sometimes called illusion, and the mind is fundamental to understanding how we perceive reality. And you can say that very simply, put like an IKEA instruction, the universe is essentially a single unified reality. And Maya is the power of manifestation that allows this unity to appear as many diverse forms. And here comes an interesting point. We could say that the mind acts as the prism of Maya. That means that each one of us have a certain mindset. Our past experiences, our memories, has colored our mind or modified the mind, as Shoba so beautifully put it. And then the mind acts as the prism of Maya. So when Maya comes in as a pure white light, the prism, depending on our own state of mind, we will perceive different things. So an enlightened being who has, you could say, purified its mind, a mind saturated with compassion, will be able to see things as they truly are. Whereas most of us, I would probably say each one of us, when we look at the situation, say that we are 12 different people looking at the same situation, we will probably have 12 different experiences of it because each of us have a certain mindset and a certain prism which makes us view the reality in one sense or the other. So we need to find out, how do we overcome Maya through the mind? Because while the mind is the sort of the illusion, as we are told, It is also the tool for liberation. So let's again simplify it. We have consciousness, the one reality. It reflects itself in mind, which we call the mirror. We look into that mirror and we say, oh, this is I. Just like it says in the voice, that we will break loose from our shrine and we move into the space, the water of space. We mistake that image for ourselves. So what happened then? We identify with the mind rather than with consciousness itself. And then there appears within the mind different points of identifications. They're then being formed. And just again, to make it simple, three basic levels of ahamkara, or the sense of I. And those points of identification we recognize from the theosophical literature: the personal, the individual, and the universal. And say that we are very focused on the personal aspect of ourselves. Well, then we only have access to the personal aspect of the mind. But when we begin to understand that I'm not only Ava or Pierre or Jerry or Shoba, but I am actually something more, I am I, then we begin to also view life in the continuation of incarnations. There is the continuity and the thread that goes through it all. And eventually we'll view the individual aspect, the I am I aspect. We understand and realize it's only an aspect of the I am, of the universal consciousness or aspects of the mind. We can also to this tie the three qualities of manifested universe: the tamasic, the rajasic, and the sattvic. Now, the tamasic quality is, you could say, the most formative quality. It puts an emphasis on form, and it has a positive aspect, and that is that of being stable, but it also has a negative aspect, the tendency to crystallize into matter and shut everything else out. And also it gives rise to dogmatism. But when we start to activate the rajasic quality, that is also the transformative quality. That is that which makes us be able to break out of the identification with only the personality and to widen our perspective. And of course, the fantastic transformative aspect of the mind, the rajasic aspect of it, has also its pros and cons. It's very well functioning if we have a clear spiritual goal. But if we haven't, it can tend to become restlessness instead. And then we have the sattvic quality, that which unifies the rajasic and the tamasic and transcends both and maintains the balance. And you can see that all of this comes back on each level, of course. So let's get to the nitty-gritty. What determines which aspect of the mind we have access to? I think it's clear to everyone now, it's our point of identification. So we have to change that point of identification. And that's why we say we need a mind to raise the mind. We have to gradually raise by the mind each point of identification to a higher level. And now we come to the actual talk, the three powers of the mind, the three capital C's: choice, concentration, and compassion. And let's look at these ones in detail. The first one, choice. Well, we can ask ourselves, what can we really choose? We can choose our thoughts, but wait a minute, can we really? Or are all the thoughts that we entertain just repeated thought patterns that arises from previous memories? But we do have the choice if we know how to use it. Next come the attitudes. Attitudes often follow our thinking, and we can surely change our attitudes, but it probably needs to be changed, the train of thoughts, before we can change attitudes. And then we can change our actions. And actions, we know, is a kind of materialization of our thoughts and attitudes. So we see how all these goes together. So let's look then, what are most of us facing as the current challenge? What is our current position? Well, most of us are trapped in the personal aspect of the mind. And what does that lead to? Well, one way of viewing it is the big if. So, what is meant by the big if? What if? What if I hadn't done this? I wouldn't be in this place right now. Or what if this will happen in the future? And, I may lose my job, I may do this, or I may do that. Or if only. Oh, if only I have done this or that. Or if only I win the national lottery. I become a millionaire, and then I can become generous and giving. So we can see that the big if, expressed in these two ways, is actually taking the mind away from the present moment and leading it into either the past or the future. Another thing that is very often connected to the lower mind is the question, what is in it for me? Like Pierre was pointing out, we have to transform this into what can I contribute instead? And here comes all our likes and dislikes. And our likes and dislikes colors everything in the mind and makes us perceive things in a certain way, depending on previous experiences and memories. So the question comes, how to purify the desire aspect of the mind? Let's explore this together. So the practical application for choice. Choose our thoughts. Observe, first of all, what thoughts you hold on to, because you cannot change it if you're not aware of your train of thoughts. So try and be very observant on what thoughts are you entertaining on a regular basis. And also observe your story. The story is that prism of the mind that projects onto reality our own story. And our story is also dependent on what we have experienced before. But also, that phenomena, say that you have been to an adventure and you want to share it with a friend. And in order to make it become alive, you may spice it up a little bit. So you add to your story. Or the other person who hears you talk about adventure immediately start to think about their adventure and want to tell you their story and hijack the attention. So be very observant of your story and how you add things to reality or subtract. And here comes one of the most challenging ones. Don't criticize another person's thoughts. Rather, observe your own thoughts as they begin to become critical towards someone else. Make the world one. Try and live. No one is another to you. The next thing we can choose our attitudes. And very many of us, when we face a challenge in life, we react like this. What? Why is this happening to me? Come on. I've done all this, try to do my best, and then this happens. What? And we have to be able to transform that into so what? And realize that the present moment is a fleeting one. And we try to do the best as we meet that present moment. So meet the present moment without resistance is one of the keys to, you could say, make the mind less modified. And we can also change the attitude. We can cultivate what is sometimes within the medical field called cultivate your wealth mindset. That is, be grateful for what you have rather than focusing on what you don't have. And one has seen in medical studies that 5 minutes of this a day lower stress hormones, lower blood pressure, etc., within a week's time. Quite fantastic, isn't it? And then we have the choice of our actions. And here you could say that the action starts on the thought level. and then the attitude, and then the actual action. But also behind it all is the motive. So whatever you do, try to be aware of your motive. Try to see, is this selfish or is it unselfish? Is it white or is it black? And once you have done that, become then even more aware of your motive and start to see the gray shades of your motive. And a very dear student once said that whenever he was in doubt of how to act in a certain situation, he would picture the masters in front of himself. And he would ask himself, if I was in front of the masters, is this the action I will perform? And then most of us already know the answer. So if we're going to sum up the whole of the Bhagavad Gita into kind of simplified IKEA instruction, you could say with regards to actions that do what needs to be done in any given moment to the best of your capacity for the benefit of all sentient beings. Now we turn to the second power of the mind, that of concentration. Chauvin and Pierre talked about the modifications of the mind, how the mind gets frazzled by all the different impressions. So we cannot really reach anywhere without concentration. And consciousness, as it mirrors itself in the mind, you can see that if the mind is clear and purified, the senses functions as beautiful instruments. But the moment that the mind gets ruled by the senses, it tends to become modified, or like a lake that becomes ripples, the water ripples. So our senses in themselves are wonderful tools. I mean, however, would we be able to experience anything if we didn't have our wonderful senses? And if, for example, if you're in the forest and you take in the experience of the forest with your whole being, you take it in by the sight, your vision, your hearing, your smelling, your feeling, everything. Who would like to be without that? But the question is, am I using the senses or are they using me? Whether it's, falling prey to coffee, ice cream, as everyone who knows me know that I'm falling prey to every time, or it's some other desire that catches us and that sort of frazzles our mind. So how to stop the modifications of the mind created by the senses? I guess that's a big $1 million question that we all ask ourselves. Or how not to interfere with the natural flow of the three gunas, as Rohit Mehta points out in Yoga, the art of integration. The three gunas in a pure mind, in a purified mind, have a very balanced flow. It regulates itself. The moment we let our mind become modified by the different impressions of the senses, this balance is lost. And here we have problems. Concepts, thoughts that form in our mind are not in balance. That in itself affects the attitudes and affects also the way our body feels, our bodily health. Again, we know that we can't change something that we are identified with. So we need to create a meta perspective. And I would think that in the study of the mind, with regards to the theosophical background, this meta perspective is absolutely crucial. We have to activate what we call the witness position. And here in Sweden, we have all the mindfulness method as treatment method today within hospitals and clinics. But we have to remember that the witness position is not a static thing, it's a process. It's to be able to maintain a self-conscious awareness on the personal level, the individual, and the universal level. So it's kind of you could say, what you call a channel that you build up. And for this, we have the tool of meditation. And again, extremely simplified. Meditation has to do with quietude. Meditation and reflection both aim to still the mind. And when the mind becomes quiet and receptive, it stops projecting its own stories, allowing the unity of the one reality to become visible for us. The mind also needs to develop the discriminating power, viveka. So by using the mind to shed light of discrimination on our experiences, we can also realize the illusory nature of the sensory world and be able to see the reality behind it. Now, the practical application of concentration. What will the establishing of the witness position eventually result in? Think about it, we have to establish the witness position in everything we do on this plane before. But what it eventually will result in is the 24-hour cycle. And the 24-hour cycle, it is how do we move with conscious, self-conscious awareness that when the body goes to sleep, how do we transition in this self-conscious awareness into the dreaming state, then into the dreamless sleep state, and then coming back the same way with the spiritual inspiration to start a new day. And as many of you know, there is the fourth state, which is called the Turiya state. Here we have equalized the witness position with the Turiya state. And it's probably, debatable if that is correct. But yes, we're trying to explore ideas together. So when we are able to go to, let the body go to sleep, but remain awake, what is all this training for? What are we going to, make use of it, are we going to do? So we have to see it that what we have trained in a miniature way, we can now make use of in a larger perspective. So how do we move from this physical life into the after death states more and more with self-conscious awareness? So to do this, we have to establish the witness position. And of course, like the two previous speakers beautifully point out, it's a long, long process. But it eventually reaches a point where you can practice the art of conscious reincarnation. This is an image of the 13th Dalai Lama. Before he left the body, he was predicting roughly where he was going to be reincarnated. He also showed the signs and omens that would arise. And so when a group of people came to look for the 14th Dalai Lama, they found this little child who already at the age of 3 years old or so, could recognize his old rosary that one of the lamas who had disguised himself as a servant in that group that searched for the new incarnation had around his neck. And the young little child, the present 14th Dalai Lama, he would stretch out his hand and he said, "That's mine." He would also recognize personal belongings like his previous glasses and so forth. So that is the ultimate aim, is to be able to make these transitions with conscious self-awareness. Now, we're not quite there, most of us. I can only speak for myself. But what are the daily ways to stop the modifications of the mind? Well, here is the mantra for you. Keep your focus on whatever you're doing the whole time. And as a second very useful practice, practice the art of listening. And I can't imagine how all of you who have been listening to this is the third talk that you must have practiced the art of listening. The listening is not just an aspect of keeping the mouth shut, of course. It is the ability to put away one's own story, one's specific modifications of the mind, to truly listen to another person, or to truly take in a situation in life, or to truly listen inwardly, what is my specific needs right now. Now, almost there, we're coming to the third power of the mind, that of compassion. Because it takes the compassion of the heart to transform metaphysics into ethics. You cannot just study metaphysics. It will become quite stiff and tamasic even if one doesn't use the Rajasic energy to transform it into ethics. So compassion is the ultimate vibration of the universe. Think about Kamadeva, compassion absolute, whose whole vibration is upholding this whole universe for one sole purpose of realizing compassion. And here I would like to ask you, Shobha, if you could please read.
Sure. The Kuan Yin Pledge. Never will I seek nor receive private individual salvation. Never will I enter into final peace alone. But forever and everywhere will I live and strive for the redemption of every sentient being throughout the world from the bonds of conditioned existence.
Thank you so much. So the moment that we take this pledge, we start to activate that key vibration in ourselves, the primordial vibration of compassion. And that compassion shows itself in 7, you could say, aspects of an occult force. The occult force is compassion. It shows itself in 7 different ways. And for this talk, we have chosen to talk about this as a 7-stringed lyre. So activating each string of that 7-string lyre is what it takes to be able to manifest compassion. Now, the first string, Dana, you could say, as it says in the voice of the silence, charity and love immortal. This is the keynote of our Nirmanakaic nature. The keynote that will carry us the whole way to the realization of being able to renunciate salvation for one's own self in order to stay on and help other sentient beings reach the same. The second string, you could say it's the alignment of our instruments of expression. It is to be able to correlate one's thoughts, words, and deeds into one unified vibration, the vibration of compassion. And in doing so, create no room for further karmic actions. If you live in balance, if you live in compassion, you're not disturbing that primordial vibration, but you are reinforcing it within yourself. Then the third string, that of Shanti, has to do not so much about conquering impatience as to focusing and stabilizing the mind in the present moment. So we can see we cannot really have Shanti without having Shila and Dana, and we cannot really have any of them without the other. So Shanti is to be able to be here and to be now, and to be able to meet every moment as the best moment that could occur to us, and that could happen to us. The fourth string is that of Vairagya. And here it is to become indifference to pleasure and pain. Does it mean that we shouldn't feel pain or pleasure? Of course not. That would be, being disconnected from everything. It simply means that we shouldn't be attached to it. So we have to transcend our likes and dislikes so they don't color our capacity to view the present moment for what it truly is. Because when we transcend our likes and dislikes, then we could say that we can make every moment sacred. Sacred in the sense that each moment carries the opportunity for spiritual growth and sharing if we use it well. The fifth string that we have to activate is Virya. And that is something you could say is an aspect of the spiritual will. And as long as the spiritual will is captured in personal desires, in likes and dislikes, and I want this or I don't want that, it gets hampered. But once that we start to free ourselves from those likes and dislikes of vairagya, then you can see that the spiritual enthusiasm is starting to sprout. And how do we maintain that? And how do we maintain our motivation? And we can say that, an example, for example, take the mother. I think it was you who shared this beautiful example, Laura. Take a mother or father who gets up in the middle of the night to attend to baby's need. They put aside their own likes and dislikes in order to be motivated to help. And it's natural for parents to do this, but we also have to educate us to become, you could say, parents for the infant humanity. And this is what is the way that the Bodhisattva of compassion do. The sixth string is that of dhyana. And here we have summarized it as continuous awareness, or the art of beingness. And it says that once the golden gate opened, leads the Narjol, or the adept, toward the realm of Sat Eternal and its ceaseless contemplation. And of course, we are not there. But we must remember, according to the formula, we can also experience some of it in moments when we feel that, oh, I can be fully present here and to be fully of service to the best of my capacity. And the seventh string, the completion of it, the blossoming and living compassion of the occultly trained mind. So how can we use the mind if we haven't trained it? So we cannot just skip the mind. We have to raise the mind by the mind. Now, the practical application for compassion, where we need to start, where you have to start digging where you're at. So the daily practice is, like one student of our group here in Sweden has inspired us all to do, is to focus on one paramita for each day of the week. What is the purpose of that? Well, we train the mind to become one-pointed, and we know that all the other paramitas are represented in all the others, so they're all there, but one aspect is more focused upon. And it's very interesting, if you try to do that for some time, like a moon cycle, you will see that on that specific day, the opposite of that paramita will rise to the surface. So Dana, for example, charity and love immortal, you feel very irritated, very critical, and all those things that goes contrary to Dana. And this is just an example that is an occult force, because what it does, it brings up to the surface everything that is not compatible with the paramita. And in that sense, we get the opportunity to transform it. Then, before you go to bed, let your last thought before falling asleep be that of how to be better able to serve. And if you can, try and wake up with the same thought. And whenever you feel the opposite of the paramita rising to the surface of the mind, try and shift your focus back onto the paramita itself. So also remind yourself of the occult power of words, which all the free speakers here have used. I'm sure that every one of you can look back on your life and maybe remember some friend, some relative, some person that has uttered a few words that you still remember today that have been of a specific importance. So remind yourself that our mouth is, you could say, the paradigm of our personality. It is the logos emanating a vibration on this plane of existence. So use your words very mindfully and with a lot of compassion. Let them be healing forces in this world of turmoil rather than the contrary. And also, coming to the close here, be patient. Remind yourself to use the voice of the silent as a guiding key or golden key to unlock your studies in the secret doctrine. See how these go hand in hand. And know, for example, how B.P. Wardia says that when you study the secret doctrine, whether it's the book or life itself, If you do it with a motive of compassion or cultivating compassion, you will reach different levels in the book, but also in life itself. So, Shoba, may I ask you again kindly to read the last quote? Thank you.
That which is neither spirit nor matter, neither light nor darkness, but is verily the container and root of these, that thou art. The root projects at every dawn its shadow on itself, and that shadow thou callest light and life. O poor dead form! This life light streameth downward through the stairway of the seven worlds, the stairs of which each step becomes denser and darker. It is of the 7 times 7 scale that thou art the faithful climber and mirror, O little man. Thou art this, but thou knowest it not. Arya Sangha.
Thank you, Shoba. And isn't that a beautiful drop to conclude the whole theosophical aspect on the studies of the mind? So we like to say thank you, and here are the references. And also all the mandala images we have been gracefully been permitted to use by the courtesy of Eric and Anne-Marie Grind, two fellow spiritual travelers here in Sweden. And if you want to find out more about them, there you have their website. So thank you, everyone, for your patience and your attention.